Welcome back, everybody, to Let's Play Fire Emblem Path of Radiance for the Nintendo GameCube. Last time we booted up the game, and today we're going to be starting up Chapter 1, which is going to be our first big foray into the field of Fire Emblem, for certain. We're not going to be messing around this time, folks. We're going to actually be out there fighting enemy units and what have you. Nothing too terribly crazy, though. The plot hasn't really kicked off yet, per se. We're still in the early game, after all. Anywho, we are a part of a group called Grill Mercenaries. So, what the Grill Mercenaries is that unlike every other Fire Emblem game where you start off as a lord and you are part of a kingdom that your dad or mom or whatever owns, we're actually part of a ragtag team of mercenaries that takes part in basically solving issues for the townsfolk and what have you. And this includes things like taking care of bounties, fending off bandits, getting rid of pirates, the whole 9 yards essentially. And for these guys, it's really not much more than a simple paycheck. You can tell by this exchange that, yeah, they're not all that strong. So, that's what we're going to be doing for our first mission. And, hey, like what's his face? Jello Apocalypse says, as long as they're ugly and toothless, then it's okay to beat them up as long as they have some kind of ill intent towards us and everybody else. So this here is Titania. She's going to be kind of our mentor figure for most of the game, and with that we have two new additional units. Those being Boyd and Oscar. We're going to be talking about these units in excruciating detail once we actually arrive on the scene to take care of the bandits. So don't you worry. I've got all the commentary and in-depth explanations you need here at meistergaming.co. And Boyd is over here running his big stupid mouth. But hey, Mike's just going to be like, yeah, I'll take your word for it, I guess. I'm just going to let you talk and let your actions do the speaking, I guess. But hey, Ike seems pretty chill about this, honestly. Like, you would figure that he'd be super hesitant going into this. Killing off, people. I mean, not innocent people, but people nonetheless. This would be something that most people would be scared out of their minds for. But I guess because he's been around this kind of thing for so long, growing up around a mercenary group that, is deployed to go and kill these kind of cretins, it's probably just like, whatever. I mean, this is bound to be something I was, raised to do anyway. But, yeah. Anywho, Boyd here is going to give us the run-up of the fact that, this being a Fire Emblem game, this is not going to be something where you can go in as a one-man team and take care of everything, unless you raise your units correctly, of course. You definitely do need to rely on your party to get the job done and alternate between your units that not only you have now, but as you attain across the course of the game to be able to progress through these chapters and make use of their lines of skills, so to speak. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get right into it and talk about our units. Shall we? Alright, so I'm switching over to post commentary for the unit overviews from this point forward, or at least for now, because I made multiple mistakes during the initial recording of this video. I screwed up a lot of facts, so yeah, I figured I'd go ahead and address these issues now while I'm at it, so that way I don't shoot myself in the foot later for these misconceptions. So, the first unit we're going to be talking about is Boyd. Axe fighters typically end up getting the lower end of the stick in most other Fire Emblem games, and that's typically because they end up with pretty bad speed and skill. And if your units cannot hit a target, or double or dodge for that matter, they're going to run into a lot of trouble. And on top of that, Axe Fighters don't typically have a whole lot of defense or resistance either. They're glass cannons that just happen to have a lot of HP. But Boyd kind of avoids these issues altogether for the most part, depending on how you raise him. His bases are slightly better than Ike's starting off, but they're still not all that great. He has 6 speed, which is alright. His base and skill, which is 4, does kind of kill him a little bit. So Boyd is going to be a character where you'll need to invest in him long term to get any good benefits out of him. But good growth rates he has. Oh my goodness. He can definitely fix these issues with time if you have the time and patience for sure. He has a 60% in strength, which is to be expected. 50% in skill, 45% in speed, 25% in defense, and weirdly enough, 25% growth in resistance, which is supposed to be low, but most of the time, axe units don't typically get growth rates and resistance at all. So it kind of baffles me that Boyd gets any at all, which is so funny. And later on, these growth rates can kind of matter a little bit because I was thinking one of my units who only had a 25% in speed would actually end up getting gypped in the long term. But once you figure out how these little differences can actually mean something, you can still kind of fix things thanks to how the random level ups work over the course of the game. But yeah, Boyd is definitely somebody you'll want to invest in for your primary axe fighter for sure. I don't think anyone else really comes close. If you need an axe fighter, Boyd is your Boyd. And a lot of his bases, especially his skill, can definitely be solved in time. The biggest issue you're going to be running into in the early game is how his strength starts up. 7 is actually not impressive for strength at all, considering his class. And I say this because I actually end up making a mistake later in the video where I say the Constitution affects how well a unit can hold on to a weapon and not get weighed down by it. And while that is certainly true for most Fire Emblem games, Path of Radiance does not follow those rules for some strange reason. Nope. We're back to classic Fire Emblem, where strength is what influences how well your fighter can wield a weapon and not get weighed down by it. So that means Boyd can get weighed down by steel axes even in the early game. So yeah, that's kind of dumb. That's really dumb. So you're definitely going to want to use iron axes for a little bit before you start investing in the heavier stuff for sure. But trust me, once you invest in Boyd and you get him promoted, because he gets 6 strength out of his promotion, dear God, Boyd easily becomes one of the biggest powerhouses of your entire party. Hold on to him. He's definitely a good friend of Ike's and a good friend of yours if you utilize him to your fullest potential. So next up we have Titania. Titania is a unit that is typically going to be the Jagan unit that you have with you in most other Fire Emblem games. But I feel like that would be kind of an insult to Titania because most Jagan units typically only stick around for like a little bit of the early game and are usually going to be your crutch for making up for your deficiencies and harder difficulties. But Titania has such amazing bases and good growth rates that she can still be pretty valuable even by the late game. So yeah, look at this. She has 7 resistance, 11 defense, 13 skill, 12 strength, and then when we look at her growth rates, they're pretty damn good. Like, typically they should be low, but they're pretty above average, honestly. You have 45% in strength, 60% in skill, meaning she's going to be critting the fuck out of everything. 50% speed, 40% in defense, meaning that her defense is going to be kind of a problem in the late game. So, yeah, you definitely want to be careful there. And at a 45% uh, growth and resistance, Cavaliers usually don't handle mages all too well. But Titania is going to be a consistent mage killer through and through in this game. You just toss a hand axe her way and she just murders all of them. Uh, the only thing really is that you still definitely want to treat this like any other Jagan in the sense that, like, you definitely don't want her hogging up every bit of experience that you come across in the game. I mean, considering that she is a pre-promote, that obviously means that she only has 20 level ups and she's done. So, like, she's not gonna, have as much potential by the end of the game as everybody else does, considering you raised them correctly. The defense especially is going to be a problem. And, yeah, whenever you have a pre-promote, fighting off weaker enemies, they tend to get less HP than your average everyday unit, which is why sometimes I don't advise, like, promoting most of your other units early on, except for maybe Gatry, mostly due to availability reasons. But, yeah, Titania, especially in the harder modes of Path of Radiance, she is going to be your crutch, and a damn good one. Even if you want to keep this character around for the end game, go for it. She's amazing. And lastly, we have Oscar, our Lance Knight. So Cavaliers cannot carry up to 2 weapons like they could in other Fire Emblem games. It is the one weapon that they're assigned with, and that weapon only, meaning we'll also be running into Sword Knights, Axe Knights, and even a Bow Knight later on. Oscar comes with a decent-ish basis, better than Boyd and Ike, actually, from the get-go. He starts off with 7 speed and 8 defense, which is really good, and 6 strength, which is eh. So his growth rates are kind of average-ish, but Cavaliers have a special something that makes up for this greatly. So first, let's go ahead and talk about those growth rates and his bases and how they contribute into what kind of unit he's going to be later down the road. So he has 45% in strength, 50% in skill, 45% in speed, 35% in defense, and 30% in resistance. Again, what is with the Cavaliers and having decent resistance growth? It's so weird. The Fled. So, one problem Oscar is going to be running into for sure is definitely his defense and strength. Mostly because, like, his strength base is not all too great, and he can definitely get jinxed by bad RNG. So him actually putting on meaningful damage is going to be kind of difficult, but he does have the speed to at least back it up somewhat. And on top of that, his defense, while it does start off great, once you start hitting the late game, that 35% growth is going to kind of hurt him, and he becomes substantially less tanky than he should be. He's not really a tanky unit per se. In fact, in his case, he's more of a head and run kind of character. So Cavaliers are pretty busted in Path of Radiance because of this fact. So in other Fire Emblem games, typically speaking, if you end up rescuing a unit and you still have a lot of spaces of movement left, then you'll use up that movement to run away to a different spot. Path of Radiance takes that a little bit further. So in Path of Radiance, if you hit an enemy and still have plenty of movement left, you can use those remaining spaces of movement to run away. That is broken. Considering how much movement they start off with at 8, which is insane, even for a Cavalier, they can easily play a very effective head and run strategy and will rarely put themselves in any danger of ever getting hit by foot on-foot units. They're pretty insane, and typically what I like to do is that I like to throw javelins and hand axes on the cavaliers and then have them run away, and my enemy units will never end up actually hurting these dudes. And considering how big the maps in Path of Radiance are, yeah, the mounted units are easily going to be the best units you come across in the game. So even if they don't have amazing stats compared to the on-foot units, uh, their class alone carries them. And outside of one Cavalier that we run into, we're going to be abusing all of them. And we're going to be showcasing why these guys are absolutely broken. So, yeah. Oscar may not be the best mounted unit, but he is carried by the fact that he is a Cavalier nonetheless, with good speed, and has the potential to be a mage killer at some point thanks to his speed and resistance growth. So, yeah. Be sure to use him.
So this class or map here is filled to the brim with axe units. Don't get too used to them, because we're not going to be seeing a whole lot of axe units past the very, very early game. And that's actually another issue I want to talk about in regards to Ike. And where did I get all of these iron swords from? So Ike faces the issue of this being Path of Radiance. So what do I mean by Path of Radiance exactly? Let's go ahead and have Ike attack here. Go ahead and have him cover our bases here, because why not? He's got the weapon triangle advantage after all. So Path of Radiance, despite how good axe units are in this game has a weird obsession with just littering lance units all over the place. And considering that swords are the only weapons in the weapon triangle that don't like 2 range, as opposed to like spears and axes, where you can get hand axes or javelins and toss them from a distance, Ike is very susceptible to getting 2 range, and he's not often going to be at a weapon triangle advantage. So being a sword unit is almost a touch of death in this game, especially once you get the Myrmidons, because they're not going to be serving much purpose besides being mage killers, unfortunately. So, yeah, that is just a fact. So, this game's got a weapon triangle, much like any other Fire Emblem game of its kind possesses, so to speak. So, this here is a pretty even matchup, so we're going to have Boyd hold off the fort here and have him be the choke point guide here. And I'll put Titania here just to build support. They wouldn't go after Titania, trust me, so we'll be able to feed the kill to Ike and move on from there. So, yeah, let's go ahead and actually have Boyd come over here and visit this house. So this game does indeed have supports. If you stick your units, or the compatible units, right next to each other, they do get little bonus gains based off of how good their support level is. We'll be going into more detail with supports once we finish Chapter 7, but for now, it's a pretty good idea to have your compatible units standing right next to each other. So not only do you have a better wall built, you're getting more bonuses out of your enemy fights and what have you. And let's hope my low skill base doesn't screw me up here. Awesome. And because enemy axe units tend to be slower than most other units, most of them are going to end up being doubled, considering you have the weapon triangle advantage. So Ike is pretty damn good for this map, and because of that, and the fact that this game happens to be filled to the brim with Lance units anyway, I would actually suggest that you feed a lot of kills to Ike in this map. It's going to be good for the long term, trust me. You want to feed Ike as many kills as you can so you can get him out of his shaky bases and let his growth rates do the rest. And he's been getting some good growth so far. Can't really complain about that. Wow, he just doubled that sword unit. He normally wouldn't be able to in most other runs, but he's gotten some good growth so far, and he's been able to manage off of that just for that sole reason. So let's actually give... let's see. Let's check our enemy ranges here. I don't want to be throwing my unit into too much danger now. So I might actually just straight up... Let's see. Okay, not bad for weapon triangle disadvantage. These guys do have low speed after all, so yeah, 4 speed versus 7, you do the math. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with feeding to kill the Void here, since he's going to be a good long-term unit, and as I've mentioned previously, Cavaliers are pretty damn broken, and I'm going to be making sure I take full advantage of that fact. If the game gives me the appropriate pawns to play around with, even in the early game, I'm going to be taking advantage of it, damn it. So, when I think about it, I don't know if I want to... I'm going to actually have Void take a vulnerary here. And then... okay, so he's not within distance of that house yet. So we're going to need to act fast. So I don't want him within range of this dude at all. We're gonna try to play it safe and just let Ike strike from here so he doesn't get hit by that X dude up north. Oh, dodged. Nice. But we're gonna need to be going after these fighters soon enough, or he's gonna come into this house and pillage it. We won't be able to steal the goods, and that ain't no good. I probably underestimated Ike's speed advantage just a little bit. Okay, that's about to be expected, I guess. Oh boy, yeah, better do something about that. In fact, I'm actually not even gonna have you attack on this turn. I'm gonna have Ike take him out. Do I really want to is the question. Let's have Oscar here take care of this dude, so that way we don't put Ike in danger of getting hit. Well, that crit certainly wasn't necessary, but I'll take it for good measure. So I guess I should probably address the elephant in the room, which is the animations. So Path of Radiance is the first 3D Fire Emblem game in the series, right? And considering that Intelligent Systems hasn't really had much experience with working with detailed 3D graphics, which, now that I think about it, the only games they have done that with at this point were Paper Mario? The Paper Mario games, the first 2 specifically. And those games had a rather rigid, simplistic art style compared to most other games of its time. Because Paper Mario was kind of its own thing, you know? So, this basically means that I don't think Intelligent Systems quite knew what they were doing when they were trying to bring an anime-esque looking game series into the 3D realm, and the animations look kind of stiff as a result. I try not to let that get in the way of like my impressions of the game. I'd say, but it's definitely something I would say that more or less brings the presentation of this game down just a tad, especially when you look at these units on the map, because these units, if you look at them up close, are very low poly and low res, and they're not very pretty to look at, especially by this time standards, for certain. It was a new field for intelligence systems, man. You gotta cut them just a little bit of slack, I guess. So we're gonna have Titania move up just a little bit in case Ike gets himself into trouble, because Cavaliers have a bigger quantity of body points. I'll have to look up the specific name of that statistic later after this enemy turn is finished. But oh wow, the X unit didn't even attack Ike at all. I guess he has the right idea. So Cavaliers tend to have something called build or body size. So depending on how big this number is, this actually affects not only the kind of weapons the character can handle. So, for example, Ike has a pretty beefy build because he's a big, strong, growing boy. But if your character has a lower build, they're less likely to handle heavier weapons such as steel swords and stuff, and as such, they end up getting slowed down from using that weapon, and that leaves them vulnerable to not only being more likely to be attacked, but it also leaves them more open to being doubled as well. So you definitely want to bit those kind of weapons over to those kind of characters. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that because Cavalier units, unless they're female, that totally wasn't sexist to say at all, they have the body build to be able to rescue units. And much like picking up weapons are concerned, depending on how big the unit you picked up was, this affects their speed as well. So you don't always want to be going and rescuing units willy-nilly, because it does kind of create a sort of backfiring notion on the rescuing unit itself, so to speak. So we got to get rid of that dude ASAP, because he's kind of in trouble. In fact, we're actually gonna pop in another vulnerary. And then we're gonna have Oscar take care of this dude. Not too bad of a first chapter in terms of difficulty, but you definitely still want to play it safe to some degree, considering it is hard mode after all. And so I'm gonna see if this dude is within range of Ike. No. So I'm gonna actually try and see if I can land a hit on this dude, and if Ike ends up getting hit, I'm gonna actually have Titania rescue him. He did get hit, so there we go. I'm gonna move him just a little bit out of the way here. This is looking kind of scary. So let's see what I can do here. Yeah, this kind of seems like the safe course of action. I'm trying to feed as much experience as I can, hence why I'm playing this weirdly, I guess, for the first chapter. Skill and speed. Skill and speed are definitely pretty handy. I would say getting growths in those can often be more important than defense and strength sometimes. So yeah, I'll take that for good measure. So let's go ahead and drop Ike right here. And I'm actually going to have Titania visit that house instead. So let's go ahead and pop in one more vulnerary. Burning through these vulneraries, goddamn. So what do we get from this? A Seraph Robe. I think I'll be popping that on to Ike here in a bit, because he's gonna really need it compared to the other allies here. Call that main character privileged. So I'll have Ike pop in a vulnerary here, and have him hold on to this position, and have Boyd and Oscar not too far behind. I have to look at the hit rates again and see if he can really land anything super accurately. Oof. This guy hits like a truck. Okay, so... Okay. So yeah, might as well just go ahead and finish it on this turn. See, I'm not like Mangs. I don't have Mang's math syndrome. I know how to do my numbers, damn it. Even if you only get a level up in speed, take it, man. Take it and run away. Because it is, without question, the most important stat to have in this game. For damn sure. So, because Ike is really the only one here who can actually finish up this chapter, we're gonna end this turn right here, and then seize and clear the map.
And that wraps up chapter 1. That wasn't too bad, I guess. I almost got Boyd killed, but luckily for me, that one bandit just happened to be gunning straight for that house and nothing more. I guess you could call that dumb luck. But anywho, Titania mentioned something about Ike's father, and whenever somebody says nothing, that obviously means it's something important, and we're gonna have to hold off on that for later because plot, narrative, all of these different sorts of story elements, blah. But yeah, apparently it's insulting for somebody to break their axe, even though in the Fire Emblem universe we learned that all of our weapons are disposable. So, Oscar, what are you getting your panties up in a notch about this for? It's like, come on, man. It's not how it works, damn it. But ooh, good hot meal. I didn't know Miss was a good cook, but hey, I guess she's gonna be doing something at the camp, right? But yeah, I just now realized that the bonus experience thing I just turned on in the previous video actually leads to this. I don't know why something like this isn't turned on by default, but yeah, depending on how fast you finish up a chapter, you will get more bonus experience out of doing so. And we're going to be going into more detail with BXP once we hit that point of the game. So, with that being said, that's going to be it for Chapter 1 of Path of Radiance. Stay tuned for Chapter 2. So, see you guys then.